Did a representative from New York just figure out how to help Donald Trump cut taxes on Social Security? If you've been paying attention, Donald Trump campaigned last year that he was going to try and make taxes on Social Security, or I should say, eliminate taxes on Social Security. That was one of his big and bold campaign promises. Many people were highly skeptical. I am one of those people that could possibly happen. There are a host of different reasons, some of them political, some of them just practical, but many people were very skeptical that Congress could even get that done. Although there are many millions and millions of Social Security benefit recipients that would absolutely love to have their benefits no longer taxed. In fact, one of the biggest arguments about taxes being eliminated for Social Security is the simple fact that the way the benefits are actually funded are through payroll taxes. So we pay taxes into the system to fund the system. And then when we do receive those benefits could actually be taxed again. A lot of people do not like this sense of double taxation. There could be a solution on the horizon, and I will say firmly that this is still, in my opinion, a long shot. But before we dive into that, let's look back and see exactly what Donald Trump was proposing. In Trump's campaigns during the 2024 election, he made several bold promises when it came to taxes. He wants to reduce the corporate tax rate. He wants to eliminate taxes on tips. Another thing that Trump mentioned was that he wanted to eliminate tax on Social Security. Immediately, this was panned by a lot of his critics, and even members of Congress did not see the practicality of it, although most of them publicly stated that they liked the idea. After all, in an election, you don't want to eliminate one of the massive voting blocks that is baby boomers. So you don't want to tell folks, hey, we're not really for eliminating taxes, at least during an election. But one of the things that has happened since then is there have been the usual opponents saying this isn't happening, this is a terrible idea, this will never pass. But there have been some other folks that have been skeptical for fiscal reasons, meaning that what are we going to do with this lost tax revenue? We have massive deficits. If we reduce tax revenue, even by a little bit that is collected from Social Security, and it's not a little bit, we would actually be increasing deficits, not reducing deficits, which is what we're trying to accomplish, or at least the Trump administration is saying that they want to accomplish. Well, the proposal that I've been waiting for just came up February 2025. New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis. She has put forth something called the Trust Act. I'm not going to get into the acronym because, first of all, it's going to be polarizing, but let's just call it what it is. It's the Trust Act. And what Maliotakis is actually proposing, to me, makes a ton of sense, not only from a fiscal standpoint, from how a fairness doctrine should be looked at for the Social Security program, but at the same time, it makes sense from a political standpoint, because when I explain to you how this is going to play out, the politics of it are going to be very interesting. If you understand anything about how Social Security gets taxed, first of all, many millions of Americans, especially lower income Americans, already do not pay tax on their Social Security benefits because the current tax brackets for Social Security were designed to do was to start taxing the benefits of higher income earning Americans, especially those who are higher income earning in retirement. Well, the problem with that is these tax brackets were initially created in the 1980s, and they were never adjusted for inflation. So what we have are brackets that were instituted decades ago, and they've never been updated. Well, what Maliotakis is saying is that we should update these brackets. In fact, she doesn't want to update them. She wants to double them. The way that they determine tax on Social Security is they create something referred to as provisional income, and then they run that number through these brackets. So they take half of your Social Security benefit, any other sources of income, and they run it through these tax brackets. Well, the first tax bracket starts at $25,000. So half of your Social Security plus any other income. If you're underneath $25,000, there's no tax on your benefit. If you're over $25,000, well, you go into up to 50% of your benefit can be taxed. If you go over $34,000, well, $34,000 is where we creep into the part where up to 85% of your benefit could be taxed. For married couples filing jointly, it starts at $32,000 and it goes up to $44,000. Does this government math make sense? It's extremely weird and kind of convoluted, as many government programs can be. However, what Maliotakis is saying is that these brackets that were put into place, one was instituted during Reagan's administration, the other during the Clinton administration. Well, it's kind of been a while since either of those guys were in office. And we've kind of had, I don't know, some inflation. So what she's saying is we should update these brackets. Her proposal is to just start at the bottom and double it. So for single filers, you would no longer start at $25,000, but you would start at $50,000. And for married couples filing jointly, you would no longer start at $32,000, but you would start at $64,000. However, she also proposes that we should index these brackets for inflation so that moving forward, the way that the tax system would work is that it would kind of maintain the same type of status for the same type of impact, even as people's incomes rose over time. You see, the problem when you don't index tax brackets to inflation, if you have things like wages, if you have things like interest income or other things that may go up or grow over time, what will happen is more and more of the income that was initially designed to be excluded or removed from potential taxation now gets clawed into more and more of that income being taxed, or more and more of it is possibly captured. Some call that a bug. I think DC knows that that's maybe a feature of not indexing these brackets to inflation. My belief is that this is going to be a very strong proposal when it finally reaches the committee and possibly comes out of committee and is open for debate in front of Congress. Why do I think that this has a really, really strong chance of passing? Well, the reason why I think it does is, one is entitlement programs are hugely important, especially to the baby boomers, and I would say even the Gen X or pre-retiree cohort that is looking to figure out how they're going to maximize or use their Social Security benefits as part of a retirement income plan. For many millions of Americans, Social Security is a significant part, possibly the entire part of their retirement income that they're receiving. So being able to offer some tax relief on these programs is going to be massive from an economic standpoint. And it's also, in my opinion, would be somewhat economic stimulative, because if you think about, you were always paying this money in taxes, and now all of a sudden you have more discretionary income because you're paying less in taxes. Well, that automatically increases your purchasing power. So I think that would be huge, especially for our lower income retirees. But the people who will probably benefit the most, pay attention, the people who will probably benefit the most are the middle class, mass affluent retirees who are going to have opportunities to determine how and when they claim Social Security, or those who are already receiving a really strong Social Security benefit, but they have other retirement assets. Because what this can mean is it can mean money that was initially going to be earmarked for taxes may no longer be getting paid out in taxes. And there could be a significant increase in the standard of living, but it also could open up the opportunity to do proactive tax planning. Why do I think this may pass in DC? I think that it's going to be extremely difficult for anyone in the floor of Congress to get up and tell Americans that tax brackets that were instituted in the 1980s and the 1990s have no reason to be updated for inflation. Remember, we have two political parties right now, both of which have been very upset about inflation and have been using the impact of inflation as a talking point to discuss the other side of the aisle's policies. Well, in this case, we would have to see someone on the floor of Congress openly saying that we did not need to actually increase these tax brackets because of inflation, which would be completely counter to everything they've been saying. Yes, it would actually add to the deficit in the short run, but at the same time, this is one of those programs that probably needs to have a serious look at the way the benefits were structured, and I think it's going to have a very strong chance of passing. Now, will that happen? We will have to wait and see. But for now, if you want my opinion on what I think is going to happen with Social Security, I think it's still very much a moonshot that Donald Trump is going to be able to make Social Security benefits completely non-taxable. Can that happen? It's possible. What I think is more likely to happen is that there's going to be a very strong debate about the fact that these tax brackets that determine how much of your Social Security benefit is taxable need to be updated. And where that lands, no one knows, but I think it's going to be a very, very strong likelihood that this will have legs when it comes through Congress. And this is what I believe is most likely to pass. If that happens, many millions of Americans are going to see immediate tax relief, especially our lower income seniors, but our middle income, middle class Americans, mass affluent retirees have just made a huge windfall when it comes to potential for tax relief and proactive tax planning. We'll have to see what happens, but I'm looking forward to that debate because I think it's going to be a good one. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you soon.